kind of think that I'm kind of a particularly paranoid individual, but in planning this conference, the more I thought about it, the more people we had in place and the agenda, the more I thought, this is kind of dark. This is getting darker, but oh my God, Cliff Lynch this morning. I think, you know, half the people left at lunch left because they're terrified. The prospects, I mean, we have governments are getting smaller or playing a smaller part, or the public apparatus of national libraries and national archives are playing a smaller part in the information world now than they ever did before, giving way to commercial entities and the big cloud providers. The scale of documentation and data being produced now is overwhelming, and it's getting bigger. Surveillance is shaping the information industry to an extent that I think was not even the case during the Cold War. And now finance is moving, you know, the world of finance is moving into a dominant position, or at least becoming a more powerful thing in the economics of information. And so I think there's plenty of room here to do work. Where to start? Yeah, I think it was like a Pandora's box yesterday and today. The discussions of you know, what's falling apart and what norms are being violated, what norms are being threatened. I think we've got our work cut out for us. Specifically for CRL, CRL did, as I mentioned yesterday, it did come about as a product of the Cold War to a certain extent. It was 1949 when CRL was founded, and it was an organization that was set up really to gather intelligence from various parts of the world. The first thing they did was subscribe to newspapers from different parts of the world. That was something, it was an endeavor by the universities themselves, not by the libraries, by the universities themselves, to solve a problem, which was there was there was almost no region on Earth that was not of strategic interest to the United States. That's in the globalized world now, it's the same. It's similar. We're a global power. U.S. is a global power still, to a lesser extent now than it was in 2016. But that's the way it goes. One of the problems there, though, is that if in retreating from being, you know, basically the champion of the democratic norms with regard to access to information, with regard to privacy, and that kind of thing, if the U.S. withdraws much further from the world stage on that, those norms are going to disappear in favor of norms propagated by governments that are more oppressive and more surveillance-oriented than the U.S. At any rate, but again, what does that mean for CRL? I think CRL several years ago went beyond being a repository and got into supporting libraries making their own decisions about what to acquire electronically, the licensing world. We got into it, and we vowed that we were not going to be a buying club. That's not why CRL was in licensing. What we said was this is a way for libraries to, or at least our membership, to collectively engage with the commercial producers of documentation and data. Those commercial producers are bigger now. It's not just ProQuest and Gale, it's Monsanto and Digital Globe and them. So I think that's really important to do. I think we want to leverage our collective power even more. I think CRL can do that better now than it could before, because we have a partnership with NERL, the Northeast Research Libraries Consortium, which is hosted by CRL, and that NERL is doing some strategic planning, which will lay out their future with regard to what they're going to do, particularly with promoting open access to government information. But it's, I think, between CRL and NERL together, and working with the Canadian Research Knowledge Network, which is also a partner, and and JISC to a lesser extent, but JISC nonetheless, we may be able to do more in the way. We may be able to get more scale into the fight or into the engagement with the commercial producers of data and documentation and evidence than we could before. We are continuing to compensate for what our national libraries aren't doing anymore. Academic libraries are doing that. If CAMP The Cooperative Africana Materials Project has several years in a row helped subsidize some of the Library of Congress's own collecting and reformatting of materials from East Africa. That, as the national government continues to retrench and continues to withdraw from its interest in its support of humanities and social sciences, I think we're going to have to step up more, and I think that's in the area of dealing with the commercial providers. That's our domain. Second, direct support of the organizations in different parts of the world that are doing important things, that are saving documentation, that are preserving documentation, that are collecting documentation. Our typical model as libraries is to wait for the aggregators to pick this stuff up and then buy it from them. I think we have a stake, our universities have a stake in the survival of that documentation and data being produced, whether it's by Freedom House or whether it's by the groups that Derek Peterson is working with in Uganda. We have a stake in the survival or the future of that, and even if we're not bringing it here and putting it in our libraries, we have to support. So the trick is, how do we design the support we provide them? How do we structure that support? Is it just money? Is it a combination of money and expertise and that? But I think that's the model that that Melissa talked about is really, it seems to me, the future. And I think if we can collectivize that effort, not just rely on one institution like the University of Texas or one institution like UCLA to do it, that would be an important thing for CRL to do. I think we can. Sharing information, sharing best practices, and sharing experiences is a particularly valuable thing. I think I've learned a lot yesterday and today, and I think many people here have. And so I think providing a venue for this kind of discussion, this kind of exploration, a venue that includes not just librarians, but also scholars, also consumers of documentation and data, and also the producers of documentation and data, I think is extremely important. We did Leviathan back in 2014, which was a very good, actually a seminal exploration of the issues and challenges around born digital government information and government records. And I think we'll continue in these. We maybe will be kind of a charitable version of the Charleston Conference in someday. Can we aspire to that? Kind of the Charleston Conference, but more spiritual than than Charleston. I don't know. The narrative for this, I think a lot of the problems, a lot of the challenges we looked at, the gobbling up of data, agricultural data by Monsanto and them, and the prohibition of Yemeni students at Stanford looking at digital globe photos of the Earth, that kind of thing. Those are problems. They're not library problems. They're university problems. They're problems that are going to affect, if they're not already, they are already affecting universities. This is a big fight, and it's not just the library. I think our narrative has to be better, more effective, more impactful for universities. The narrative about what we're actually doing. We're not buying content anymore. It's we are still buying content, of course, but that's not the thing that libraries do. We don't acquire things. We don't only acquire things for the faculty. We're basically fighting a battle that's going to try to prevent the Elsevierization of the rest of the world, and that's going to hurt the universities if corporate research, if the kind of research being done inside Monsanto and inside ExxonMobil is more powerful and better and more advanced than what's being done in universities, you're going to have climate change denial. You're going to have denial of the effects of tobacco on people, that kind of thing, because that's where that research goes. So we need a bigger narrative, it seems to me. We talked yesterday at the CRL meeting about needing a bigger boat. I think we need a bigger story. So we're meeting tomorrow. The Global Collections Initiative Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow, and I think a number of those people are here, and we're here yesterday and today. And I think a lot of the ideas that surfaced here and that a lot of the questions and comments are really informing that. the Global Collections Initiative is really, it's a Mellon Foundation funded project that is really intended to help CRL rethink the way we provide, or the way we source and source documentation and data from different parts of the globe for scholars. And as Pamela pointed out, it's supply chain may not be the right metaphor. My self-esteem is really wounded because I was really proud of the title of this thing, but that makes complete sense. It's not a supply chain anymore, not in the conventional way. It's not linear. It's ideological, it's economic, it's environmental. So it's a different thing. So, but we'll take that under advisement. We'll never again call CRL conference about supply chain. Anyway, but in the end, it's up to you guys. It's what CRL does. It's the area materials projects or the project. Those are the people who are deciding what CRL, what comes into the CRL collections, what gets microfilmed, what gets digitized these days. The Global Collections Platform will help us do that more effectively, or help us gather their expertise more effectively and help enable them more than we did. It's your funding that supports what CRL does. It's your expertise that supports what CRL does, and it's your priorities. So if we are channeling your priorities properly, then all will be well. But that's I think these venues, these kinds of events are ways that enable us better to channel your priorities and channel your thinking. So I thank you all for being here. Keep posted, or we'll keep you posted. You're now under surveillance, and so we know where you all live, and so where you all reside. So we'll be in touch with the report on this project. Meanwhile, very soon, probably within a week, the audio and the PowerPoints will be all up on the web for this, so you'll see that. I've been asked by Virginia Kerr, who is the planner of the project, or who's the person who's done a lot of our logistics on this, to fill out the survey that's on your table and hand them in back at the registration desk. So, and with that, if you fill out your survey, I hope you have a great weekend and a safe journey home.